Susan, lovely to see you again.
Ken, my dear, how are you? I'm so excited for this show. I can't stand it. And I've rounded up all my people from YouTube and told them to come on over here now.
Well, I'm really grateful for that. And I have to say, I'm so excited for this chat too, because I feel like this is definitely a topic which a lot of people probably don't even think very much about. And I'm just so grateful that you brought a lot of your energy, your time, and your love to this show. So to start with, do you want to share with everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so for all the Aussies in the audience, and I know it's early, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, you brave man. Anyway, no, I know, because, I mean, that's brutal. I have to do makeup and lighting takes 40 minutes. I'd be crazy. So I'm a best-selling author and a relationship expert, and I specialize in evolutionary relationships. And what I mean by that is I call it love a la carte, where you create a model that is authentic and real for you. We are never going to be able to do cookie cutter if we are not cookie cutter people. And we are evolving as a society. And part of what Ken and I have been talking about is how to find the type of relationship that you want. Not only that you want, but better yet, that you can actually do. Actually do. Not just say you want it, actually do it. And then be able to communicate that to your partner so that you can have a dynamic, rewarding relationship that serves both of you. So that's what we're talking about today. Everybody assumes, oh, I know what I want. I want somebody to love me. And if you don't, right, Ken? We have to be a little bit more detailed than that, or we're going to get what we get.
100%. I could not have said that better myself. And for those of you who don't know me, who are joining from Susan's audience, my name is Ken. I'm a gay relationship coach that serves gay men and occasionally women and other people too, who are looking to delete their dating apps and to attract open, honest, committed partners. And I help them do that by boosting their self-esteem and their communication skills. So absolutely, you know, the a la carte method, which I've heard you talk about many, many times, is a really appropriate thing for people who are trying to figure things out for themselves. It's kind of like figuring out what job is good for you, or very similar, you know, what you want to achieve out of life, would you say, Susan? Because we're all sort of figuring things out. And I think we're given these, with all due respect, these cookie cutter models, you know, like true love is handed by like Disney, and like these ideas from our parents. And, you know, as a gay guy growing up, I didn't have role models, you know, to look up to within my community as to what was a healthy relationship. Most movies don't really portray a healthy, loving relationship between two gay men where it ends very well. So where am I to look outside of, you know, the darkest, deepest parts of the internet to, you know, my parents? So it's a very challenging sort of thing to figure out. But I think to draw it back to its most, you know, to start with the most basic principle, which is, you know, a hypothetical question for you, Susan. Do you think people really know what they're after in dating?
They're after feeling good, and they're after feeling desired and wanted, right? I want to, you know, not necessarily that I'm going to like you, but I certainly want you to like me, because I mean, I'm very honest about it. Sometimes I'd go on dates, and I, you know, in the days where you wouldn't really know what people look like online, and you go there and you look at the person, you're like, oh God, you're nothing like that, and they're testing me out. Sort of like they invite you for a drink, and if you're pretty enough, they'll actually take you to dinner. And I had so many guys go, oh yeah, no, I'll take you to dinner. You're not bad. I'll take you to dinner. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm thinking, I know I don't want you, but I'd like you to want me. And I mean, but it's true, right? I mean, we want to have the right to dismiss them, but nobody wants to be dismissed. So I think in the beginning, what we're looking for in our own evolution, maybe step one is, I want someone to love me so I don't feel alone. Parenthetical, that maybe I don't love myself enough, and if you love me, I'll feel good about myself because I'll believe somebody loves me, and then maybe I'll learn how to do it, right? So that might be the first layer. Would you imagine?
I would say that's fairly accurate. You know, when I was first dating, getting myself out there, just that feeling of another guy liking me was just rich. It was beautiful. It was delicious. Did I immediately like them back? Did I, you know, and I mean like, not as in, was I high on them hormones and going, getting excited by the thought of being with that person. No, as in, did I fully appreciate that human being? Probably not. And I think that one thing I've learned in my own evolutionary process with this is that, it's one thing to get excited by a person. It is another thing to love another individual and be loved in return. It is it's complicated, and it's not as simple as like, true love prevails. So it's definitely something which I think is quite confusing. And I think that, I guess that brings to a main point, which is that, I think a lot of people go into dating. I've had a lot of people talk to me about this. They say like, oh, the thing that I'm looking for on a date is chemistry. What are your thoughts around that?
Oh God, this is the most overused word, chemistry. Oh, it's either chemistry or the connection. Oh,
yes.
the connection. Oh, Lord heavens. I mean, okay. So there are always buzzwords that we have, and I think people latch onto it. And I do understand. I'm trying to put it in perspective of where we are as a society. So let's talk about chemistry, okay? Everybody's looking for that click. Sort of like the click will show me if this is something I should be doing. And you and I know from doing research, and you're a real therapist, that half the time that click is like bad stuff. This is like past stuff.
Yep.
This is the uncomfortable background that I come from, the toxic relationships. Oh, that's why it feels so familiar to me. So the click is oftentimes that mesh. And I worry about chemistry because I think that, yes, we want to be attracted to our partner. And for a long-term, loving, committed relationship, you've got to want to be with them physically. I mean, love relationships are about romance and sexual expression. That's what separates them from friendships. So you've got to have that desire to be with them. But if you base it all on the chemistry, I just think you're in for a very rough ride, and it's going to be hot and cold, and it's going to rise quickly and fall equally quickly. Is that your experience?
Oh, yeah. It's gotten to the point now where my stomach is like my best detective device. Like I know, like now I can identify someone who's not good for me. Once upon a time I couldn't, I suppose to give a quick way of describing that by way of an example. I remember I have dated guys where I have had that fall in love at first sight moment, as they call it. And, I'd be attracted to them. I'm thinking, oh my God, I really like this person. And I will tell them on the first date. And I've said to them, I like you. And, all things are going well. We got through the first hurdle of establishing whether or not you want to like even potentially make this into a relationship. But the problem is the fact that, these people that we get really excited over, and our body is giving us that, excitement factor, is also sending us another message, which is absolute terror, which is, this is a dangerous person for you, and like I would have this thing where if they were away, and they wouldn't message me frequently, and I'm not talking like, days, 24 hours on end, I'm talking like even just a few hours, I'm like, why am I so nervous when I'm not getting a message back from this person? I'm not a needy person. I'm not clingy, but I am what we call in therapeutic circles an anxious attached type, which means that when I like someone who is that particular kind of person, I freak out, I overthink, they're on my mind all the time, and I'm just like, where is this going? Even if we've established where it's going. So it's not a fun place to be. What are your thoughts on that, Susan?
Oh God, I've been there. I call it getting all girly. It's like, oh God, I get all girly. It's like I lose my normal rational mind because we each have a physical template, somebody that we like, and we have a certain look or a type. And when we see it, I'm going to give you a great story. There was a matchmaker who called me because she had a really wealthy client and she wanted desperately to get him the girl that he wanted. She kept showing him one beautiful woman after the next, and he didn't like them. He just kept finding something. She said, you got to fix him. And so I went into a therapy session with him, and I said, what is it that you're looking for? He said, I want drop dead gorgeous. And I knew not to fight him. That's what he wanted. That's all he wanted. And I said, so what about anything else? Is there anything else you need inside there? He said, if she's magnificently beautiful, I will find something to love about her. And I thought, how many times have I done that? I mean, honestly, in my learning curve to getting there, like somebody's so magnificent, my like delectable type, and then I find them extremely intelligent. I find them ambitious. I find them wildly witty. I mean, I attribute these qualities that I want them to have because I like the
Yes.
packaging, right? So I'm desperately looking for these things, and I'll augment them. And then the reality is they're just a regular person that comes in a very pretty package, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
I just thought, you know, I couldn't fight him on it because I said, dude, been there. I get it. And when I have guy clients that are really crazed over a woman, Ken, and they're going on, and I'm secretly like going on LinkedIn, like, is this guy pug ugly? I'm trying to figure out what's and I'm like, why is he not getting this girl? And I'm secretly going on, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's good looking. He's got a fantastic job. He's a really nice guy. I'll stop in the middle and I'll go, how good looking is she? He goes, oh God, she's a 10. I'm like, dude, that's where it is. You lost your mind. So chemistry, that sexual attraction, that animal attraction is so loaded with dysfunction. And I can test people when they talk about, I need to feel butterflies. Now, this is just a Susan thing. I'd love to hear your impression of this. I have identified, for me, butterflies are a mixture of excitement and terror. For me, that's the fluttery, because I'm not secure. It's excitement, but it's unsecure, like being on a tightrope. It's that kind of feeling. It's like stage fright. It's exciting to be there. You're terrified you're going to fail. So
Yeah.
excitement for me on that level has an element of terror. And then I have to look at that person. Why are you bringing up this terror thing? Not for nothing. My body is giving me a very strong clue as to what I need to see in you. So this may not be the correct way to judge what I want in a partnership. All the clues may be driving me to a place to make me choose you. And I've just strapped myself into a very difficult ride. That's how I think.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And in fact, it's been proven by a lot of therapists that when you get the butterflies, that magical thing that we all think we want, you know, as a sign of that we're in love. Nah, like actually more often than not. And having read 2 books about this, for those of you that are interested, Attached, I can't remember the name of the authors for that. Attached is an amazing book, which is all about the kind of people that we are and how we fall in love. And if you're the kind of person who gets anxious and you feel the butterflies, red flag right there. Be very mindful of that.
Right.
But the second book, which is much more insidious and horrific, is a book that was written here in Australia called See What You Made Me Do. And that's all about abusive relationships. And it talks about how one of the most common things we don't expect, and I know, Susan, you're very familiar with this technique, love bombing, you know, that can easily sweep someone off their feet in that gaga romantic kind of way. And, you know, you're taken for a ride where you're given these massive highs and lows. But without obviously going into the discussion of abusive, narcissistic style relationships, I think one of the things that I thought I'd talk about with you, Susan, which, you know, you might have a good word or two to talk about, is I think combined with bad ideas of chemistry, we also come, as you've mentioned, pre-packaged from upbringing with ideas of what we think we should like. You know, for me growing up, it was a guy that's hardworking, a guy that, you know, has like a 6-figure sounding job like law or, you know, medicine. I've dated a lot of lawyers and doctors. And, you know, as a consequence, like you're mentioning earlier, we build this idea of what we think of the person. You know, they sound ambitious, they sound creative, they sound very exciting. But all it is just, you know, our own imagination going over time. And we actually aren't really meeting with the real person. And more often than not, this, you know, our upbringing kind of leads us to liking things that aren't actually compatible with us. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think we've all been sociologically programmed far more deeply than we even want to recognize. And it comes out when you're making decisions like that. I was always rebellious by nature. So I would always, so I didn't quite fall for that. But I know so many people date looking good on paper. And I've known people that are so delusional. I had a friend when I first moved to New York. She dated a man who had the right job, the right look, and she got him to marry her. Okay. He was addicted to everything under the sun. He was in AA, NA, Sexaholics Anonymous, Gambling Anonymous. He had prostitutes that would call the house and say, he beat me up. Do you know what you're with? And the girl would say, we love each other and we're in therapy, all because he worked for an ad agency and had an expense account, and she could live on the East Side. So she had a wonderful life. So but it was, the relationship had nothing to do with connection. The relationship had nothing to do with what does she really want. I think her overriding need at that point in her life was social status, to compensate for something else. And as we mature, I hope that we get to the point where we are able to find somebody who is our resonant other, with whom we can be ourselves, that will have our back. You know, I have a template for what I like, and Ken, my eyes will automatically go to that kind of person. And when I catch myself looking at that on the street now, I say to myself, Susan, is that the guy who's going to be waiting to pick you up after colonoscopy?
Yeah.
I don't think so. That guy is not going to do that. That's not that guy. That's that hot guy. He's not going to be that guy. You know, is this going to be the guy who's going to drive you to a doctor's appointment? Or if you're in the hospital, he's going to go home and walk your dog and pick up the poop. You know, then that's a guy that loves you. So that's a whole different way of looking, right? So then the question is, what do you really want? And do you know how to look to find what you want? One is, do you know what you want? And then, and two, don't you think that thing gets amended through time as we learn, right? As we have exposure to different relationships. Because I think a lot of learning what we want is getting very clear on, God, I don't want that again. I had that, I don't want that. I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that, so I must want this, right?
Yeah, 100%. And you know, the danger of that too is that we go from one extreme to the other. And, you know, that also affects our behavior. And I know we've talked about this before, which is that editing process, because, you know, in the journey to finding what we want, we then start making assumptions. We think, oh, well, if they're calling me all the time, they must be needy, therefore I don't want them. Or if they're, you know, if they're good looking, therefore they're bad. It's like, no, it's got nothing to do with those kind of assumptions. You can't pigeonhole all brilliantly looking men or women into this category that they must be bad. You know, I had this discussion actually with my followers during the week, talking about the difference between what I call red flags and warning lights. And I said, a red flag in my books is inconsistency, but warning lights are all these little things that can pop up every now and then, which might be the sign of trouble. And, you know, we would discuss things like, do you think cheating, for instance, like if someone declares that they cheated on the first date, is a red flag or a warning light? Do you think that, you know, oversharing, like talking about a traumatic upbringing on the first date, is a red flag or a warning light? And at the end of the day, I said to my followers, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's up to you and how you feel about this person. And
that's so brilliant. That's really good.
Because at the end of the day, you know, for me, for instance, I've dated guys who've told me they cheated on the first date. And, you know, I don't think it was the fact that they cheated that was the problematic. For me, it was the fact that, you know, they said they wanted resolution, but they weren't very good at consistency. So I'm like, okay, so you're a dishonest person. But how do you figure that stuff out on the first date? The answer, I think, is in some cases you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, you feel a pull to get to know somebody, and you hear that, and you keep it in your mind. And so I used to be of the mind, way back in my learning curve as partnership, as my own partnership evolved. I used to want to know what went wrong in their last relationships, thinking that that would give me clues as to what I could expect. And then I stopped doing that. I mean, I did get a little bit of information, but I was dealing with straight men, and half the time they didn't know. I'd say, what went wrong? And they'd say, she was crazy. And I'm like, okay, that's not giving me much. Oh, wait, this is the best thing I ever heard my boyfriend say. I said, so why did you guys break up? And he said, because I didn't buy her a birthday card.
What?
And I'm thinking, okay, that's what he really thinks it is. So Susan's doing shorthand for, okay, for a woman, that's code for, I've had just about enough of not feeling a priority. And the last straw is that you don't even bother to buy me a card on my birthday. So I feel neglected. So I'm thinking he has a tendency to not make a woman feel like a priority. Just guessing, but I didn't ask any more about it. I learned that that was correct. But I also learned when I was with them, I thought, you know, I'm not her. I don't talk like her. I don't know what her skill set is. I'm going to come in with a whole new skill set. And we all know that we can be one version of ourselves with one person and a totally other with another person that brings out the better of us. We still have a dispositional core. You are always going to work with that dispositional core. You're a good person. You're an inherently honest person. You're an inherent liar. You're, you know, insecure, you're not insecure. You know, you're open-minded, you're closed-minded. You have a disposition.
Yeah.
You're quick to inflame, or you seek resolution and connection. So you've got a disposition, but then we will each be a version of ourselves that's different with that person. And maybe who they were in their last relationship is a part of them, but maybe that person also brought it out. So then again, that might be your warning signs, your warning lights, right?
Yeah.
Instead of your red flags.
You know, it's a really interesting thing that you brought up, because now that I've just thought about it, you're absolutely right. You know, the people that we're with can bring out the best and the worst in us too, depending on who they are. Like if you're in a situation where someone drives you crazy because they're hitting all your triggers, you know,
Yes.
without fail, then
Yes.
it's not necessarily to say that you who is being triggered is a bad person in a relationship. It just might mean that this dynamic, just for one reason or another, just does not work. But then again, you can be very lucky and get with another person who just understands, listens to you, and hears what you're going through, and also knows how to work around those issues as well.
Yes.
And in that case, it works. And I think that to reduce the random error of that, you know, the whole, you know, oh, we're lucky in love. The way I think of optimizing that is, you know, you almost have to go through the trial and error of dating. Yes, get hurt. And also to figure out more about what your triggers are, how you react with certain kind of people, and then start figuring out more about yourself. Because I think we spend far too much time focusing on what the other person has to be, that we forget too much about, you know, what our non-negotiables are and what we think will actually work for us as a team player.
Oh God, you touched on so many fabulous things. One is, does the person ignite us, or do they diffuse us? Because I found myself becoming, I called it, he brought out the animal in me. And I don't mean he brought out, there was a guy that was so pushing my buttons on purpose for fun. It was the first narcissist I ever dated a while back. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was happening because I didn't have that mindset. I didn't know why people would play you like a remote control for fun. Like, oh, if I push this button, look, oh, look, she's blowing up. Oh, that's fun. Let me push this again for my joy. Oh, she's going to explode. I like this. I couldn't imagine how twisted that was, but I saw this person bring out a side of me that was crazy woman. And I thought, oh my God, I've never been this person. But I was never that person because I never had anybody push me to that level of frustration and confusion and reactivity. Then the other part that you mentioned that was, oh golly, you had so many good points there. I can't remember the second part, but it was so good. It was something about how we get along with each other, but it was, you just said so many brilliant things right there.
I think maybe to summarize was that the second kind of person might be someone who's really good at working with you, with your triggers, and is there to listen and sit with you rather than necessarily, you know, react and, as you mentioned, push your buttons.
Yes, you mentioned knowing your boundaries and being aware of what they are. And, you know, I think that's the point that, I mean, everything you're saying is so brilliant. I love our conversation. So I'm glad we're having this in public. But
me too.
You know, I talk about the fact that we need to have somebody we can work with. In a relationship, our stuff is going to come up. No matter how evolved or whatever we are, we're going to have a bad day. They're going to push our button. They're going to step on something you didn't know they did it. So we have to have somebody who's willing to understand our triggers, willing to work with us, willing to know how to handle us. So
Mm.
when I truly care about somebody, I'm going to take them in as a partner. I open up my control panel. I go, look, here's how I work. This you push here, I'm going to explode. Do this, this, and this. Oh, by the way, when you piss me off, this is how I'm going to attack you. Do not make me do that.
Yeah.
I've said that. And that it's like, but you've got to have somebody who knows how to handle that information. So you need a certain level of evolution on the other end. But we're talking about very, very conscious relationships here, Ken. Most people are like, you're hot, I'm hot, let's hook up. Oh, they're crazy. You know, they're not thinking this through. Your audience, my audience, they're very conscious. So we're trying to go over the details of how to do this, right?
Absolutely. And to add to that, Susan, too, you know, I've been in situations myself where I've dated guys and I told them up front, I'm like, you know, and I've done this as a test, you know, sometimes one time I had a really crap day at work and I came home to see my guy and I was like to him, oh, you know, look, sorry if I'm feeling a bit grouchy. I just had a really crap day at work. You know, this happened, blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, my boss was really being very difficult to work with and I'm finding it really hard. And his response was, so why did your boss feel like that? You know, how did you make your boss feel? And my brain went, that is totally not what I needed to hear right now. Like, I just needed you to, and I said to him, I'm like, just to let you know, I'm the kind of person that when I'm having a moment of emotional pain, I'd like it if you can just tell me, yeah, I understand why you're feeling this way. I understand why, you know, it feels like shit, so to speak, rather than jump to solution mode, which drives me insane. Like, I know that's one of my absolute biggest triggers. Could he handle it? No. And I wasn't going to force him to try because I just thought to myself, well, that's, you know, that's just another thing I had to be mindful of with this guy. And that brings us to, I think, something really interesting because I made this post yesterday, which was all about, you know, the 5 signs of the right guy. And I think they were off the top of my head, you know, they're consistent, they're not exciting. And that goes back to the whole butterflies conversation we were having just a minute ago too. And I meant to say, like, they're not someone who's going to like sweep you off your feet within the first couple of dates. But also, you know, that they're motivated. I had a bunch of other points too, but someone made a really good question on that post. And they said to me, you know, Ken, like, what if, you know, 90% of them are there, but just that 10% of them is missing, you know, how do you deal with that? What are your thoughts on that, Susan? Like, you know, you've got a 90% package, but they just miss out on that one thing, which could be the emotional validation. What are your thoughts on that?
You hold at 20. If you're playing cards, you got 90%. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Don't you? I mean, if you have 20, you have 2 10s, don't you hold in blackjack? I mean, it's just like, you're not going to get 100%. It doesn't exist. So, no. I mean, the big thing is, when do you roll the dice for something new? Where you settle is according to where you are in life and what's going on for you. I have adult friends who are mature. They are not in happy marriages. They don't dare roll the dice again. They're holding maybe 35 to 40% of what they want. They are not happy most of the time. They don't roll the dice because they don't think they're even going to get 10% given their age and what's available. So when to hold and when to fold is a big deal. But if you get 90%, oh my God, hold it. That's crazy.
I completely agree with you. And that's exactly what I told my follower too. I was like, you know, at the end of the day, that's true love, isn't it? Because you fully appreciate that person for the good and the bad that they bring out, but you're willing to recognize that the good is worth fighting for. And that's something that's, you know, worth, you know, 100, you know, that's worth $1 billion in the bank.
So I think in the end is everybody's going to have their stuff. And the question is, how does their stuff, that 10% or 20%, how does that affect us? Is it stuff I can handle? Like certain stuff I could handle, maybe you couldn't handle or wouldn't want to handle. Or maybe I can handle something my neighbor wouldn't want to handle, but something they absolutely can't stand, I would be okay with. So that's why I describe every relationship's like a brown paper bag on a table. It's got my name on it, Susan. Like 10 of them. Got no idea what's inside till I open it up. It's like, oh, good, I've got an apple and a peanut butter sandwich. oh God, I don't want a radish. What is this doing in here? I hate this. You know, so you don't know what you're going to get in there till you open it up.
Correct. And that opening it up, you know, opening up that paper bag, that thing's got sticky tape on it. You've got to pry that
Yeah,
open over the course of multiple dates. You might
yeah,
find that everything's looking good, but then all of a sudden a cockroach pops out and you're like, where did
yes,
this come from?
yes, yes.
So I think, you know, people are looking for this sort of, I hate to use this term, I don't want to say it's instant gratification, but I think people would ideally just love to have knowledge on date one that, you know, this is someone good. And, you know, we hear that phrase, like a guy that knows, you know, what he wants is someone who's got all his ducks lined up in a row. That there have been times when a guy has seen the woman of his dreams. I've never heard this for the gay community, but like, you know, that a guy will know, you know, a woman that he wants to marry as soon as he sees her. And my thought process on that is, if that were me, I'd really have to, you know, see someone who is in that same sort of mindset, you know, someone who's consistent, someone who, you know, which I think actually is something you can't determine on date one, and also someone who really has dealt with a lot of their baggage and is just like, I'm done. I'm just ready to be with someone who I want to be with. So I think my question for you, Susan, is, you know, in your thought process, you know, is this something that we can figure out on date one?
No, everybody wants that magic bullet. Everybody wants to know, Susan, Ken, tell me the one thing I need to watch out for in the very beginning so I'll never get hurt and never get fooled. And you can't do that. It will be an aggregate of all the information that you have. And you know, for people watching, because I know they have comments, and I know, Ken, you're going to get into their question and answer, because that's what this is all about. But I you know, you're going to have to trust your gut. You're going to have to trust whatever information you've gleaned from now on, and start to look at that and look at the whole package. And there are some things that we know are red flags that we should stay away from. Too hot, too soon. Oh, they're perfect. The moment you see them, it's like, oh my God, it's love, it's chemistry. You know, it's very short-lived. So those kinds of things. I have a friend who's newly dating, and she was married for a long time, several decades. And I remember the first time she called me, and she was absolutely honest. This is one of the most grounded, solid, together women, not girly, not flighty, not anything. And she said, Susan, I've met my match. I'm in love. And I said, have you met him yet? And she said, no, but I'm going to. And I think that lasted a month for her, and she was tired. It's like, so, you know, I take this with a grain of salt, and we evolve. But what was so interesting for my friend is she met a man who treated her kindly. And in her marriage, she had a very, very difficult husband who loved to mess with you, just mess with you for fun. No. And when she met a man that treated her gently and with respect, her desire for that was so great that she fell madly in love with what she was experiencing within herself. It wasn't the guy. Then she learned the magic thing. Oh, it's not a one-off. He's not the only guy that can be kind. This one's kind to me. What do I do now? And this one is even more stable. I like this one better. So she's been on her own very fast learning track. So sometimes that's the beautiful thing, where we experience one of those aha moments where a new partner brings to light, oh my God, I've always wanted this from somebody, and you gave it to me. You know, yeah. Thank you for telling me. I really, really didn't know how much I needed this. And sometimes we need to separate that from the very person that's giving it to us and not be confused, because I don't think there's, I call it the one bus. If you've lived in New York, and, you know, at times when you didn't dare go on the subway, the 70s, like in the 80s, it was so dangerous. And you see one bus and everybody's crammed into it because they can't see another bus coming, and there's no cabs. And you think that's the last bus. I'm never going to get a bus. And then you look and you wait a little bit, and you use some judgment, you relax. The next one's got 4 people in it. You just jump in. It's easy. There's no one love. There's no last love. There's no one and only. There's no, if I don't get this, I'll never have it. So, you know.
I completely agree. And on that note of no one bus, I think that you're absolutely right. There are many buses on the road. There are many fish in great animals in that ocean.
Yes.
And I think that we've grown up so much thinking like, oh, there's only one. And it predominates our thought process that when we lose that person, we think of ourselves as a failure. I think one thing I can say for my audience, particularly for gay men, you know, one of the biggest challenges that we have, I feel, is that we see this overarching view that there's nothing but hookup culture, that there's nothing but like, you know, this ocean of men who just want to get with each other and, you know, and they want to open up these relationships. And that's a real horror story. You know, for a lot of guys, they go into these relationships thinking to themselves, oh, everything's hunky-dory, but then their partner's like, what do you think about opening this up for a third person? And in some cases, they'll go along with it. And then, you know, it could work out great. But, you know, I've heard nightmare endings where that partner's gone off with a third person. And then there's also, you know, so many long-distance relationships and just, you know, I feel my analysis of this is that there's a real intimacy issue. And I think for men, this is dominant, whether you're straight or gay, it doesn't really matter. I think one thing that we need to do in order to make this work is to just sit comfortably with our emotions. Because, you know, when we talk about what do we want out of dating, I think, you know, you touched upon this very early on, which is we want to feel good. But I think feeling good is about having consistency and stability. And you can't get that if you're constantly, you know, chasing this drug-like high, you know, of oxytocin from like the next guy. Oh, what if the next person is going to be better than the one that I currently have? You know, that chemistry chasing, it's not sustainable. So I think my way of talking about the bus, you know, what you were saying before is you want that bus ride to be as stable as it possibly can be. Because if you are constantly on this sort of like roller coaster, that's not healthy for you. So I think my answer is the more stable the relationship feels, the healthier and more sustainable it will be in the long run.
Ken, you brought up so many good points, you know, so about, I'd say maybe 20%, 25% of my clientele are gay. And now that I know you exist, I will certainly refer them to you because I deal with human nature, so it doesn't matter, but there are probably very specific questions that they would want to ask you, and that's why I'm so glad I have you as an ally. But the one thing I hear, gay men, whether they write me or I'm working with them, is like, I'm gay. Does anybody do monogamy? You're laughing, but
it's a valid question.
But it's painful to hear it. Because I know their heart's breaking because they want one guy to love, and they're like, I'm not seeing this happening. How do you handle that? Do guys ask you that question?
That's a great question. Fortunately, I've not actually, no, I had someone talk about this and it was a very lengthy conversation. They said to me that a real honest relationship in the gay community is a rarity. And I said to him, that may be so from all that you see. You know, you look at dating apps like Grindr, which are a glorified hookup app, and I think that's mistake number one. Do not use that as a baseline because that's cheap and easy. Anyone can get sex. That's easy. Then you look at the failure of marriage, and I'm saying this from the perspective as a gay man. You know, you look at the failure of marriage, you know, from our parents, you know, from older generations, and you think, is there any hope in the world for a true, honest relationship? I have heard guys say, oh, well, as a gay man, we're not actually built for monogamy because that's just the way we are. And it's like, what? What do you mean? Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. And to prove it, I know off the top of my head at least 5 couples who are in monogamous, happy, consistent, healthy relationships. There is an abundance of them. And they probably are going through a lot of challenges that they have to work through, and also a lot of, you know, what we talked about, that social pre-packaging. They have to, you know, they have to unlearn a lot of that sort of stuff too. Is it possible? Yes. But more importantly, does it exist? Absolutely. I think the thing that I found in my dating experiences that really helps, and I say this to all my clients, is you got to get clear on day one. You know, the clearer you are, you will filter the ocean out of, you know, the masses who are still figuring their stuff out versus the ones who aren't.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I mean, for me, I like monogamy. It's a matter of focus. I mean, I don't have that. I mean, if you want to really discern if something's going to work, you have to look at it, right? I mean, I can't be doing 500 things and do anything well. And it's just, it's also, it's honoring that person. Oddly, I have a different construct than most females. I don't need forever, nor have I ever wanted forever. But I need, when I'm with you and when we are in this, I would rather we stay together because we want to be together. I don't want our being together because I'm looking to you to pay the mortgage. I need you to give me a lifestyle. I'm terrified to be alone. All of our friends are couples. I don't want you for those wrong reasons. I don't want you, I want you to be here because every day you choose to be here. And I don't want to beg some lawyer to beg you to let me free. And I don't want all that encumbrance. But I do require monogamy because I'm selfish. And I'm proud of it. I'm selfish. I don't want that. If you want that, don't pick me. There are dozens of girls that don't care. Don't pick me. If 100%. You want to do that, then that's where we part. Then our thing has come to an end. That's cool. Okay. But at least nobody's lying to each other, for God's sake. I mean, what we're trying to do is just get people honest. What can you do? What do you want to do? And if you're no longer able to do it, let me know. That's it. I mean, but you're so right. And yes, monogamy is a choice. Monogamy is a choice and it's a discipline. And I know there are a lot of people that must go, you know, in marriages, they look at their partner after 30 years and go, God, you couldn't have gone to the gym at least once. But, you know, they love that. It is what it is. Yeah, and they've got other priorities in life, right?
100%, 100%. You know, I love how you said monogamy is selfish, and I completely agree with that too. You know, I didn't mention this last time we spoke, but I've had a phase where I was doing friends with benefits, and I was juggling guys left, right, and center. And I have to say, it was exhausting.
It's tiring, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, it's exhausting. And I mean, I did it at the worst emotional place in my life. I'd been broken up. I was, you know, not feeling great. That is the best time to do friends with benefits, FYI, for anyone who wants to know. Do it when you're down, because then you'll just feel numb. Probably not the healthiest thing for the partner that you're with, because if they want something real, well then, you know, you're bruising other people, which is not healthy. But really getting to the meat of this, you know, the one thing I did when I was going through that phase, as I said on date one, this is it. I'm doing friends with benefits. If you want a partner who loves you, we part ways now. If you find someone that you are more attracted to, we part ways. If you want to, you know, if you want to change things up, we talk about it. But the most critical thing is that we keep in communication and we're making sure that we're comfortable with what we're doing. And the same model applies also for when you want a monogamous relationship too. It's that setting of those terms and conditions.
Ken, you spoke, you laid the groundwork. People don't do these conversations. That's why there's so much of a problem. You know, when you get into something, and I mean, the worst time to start talking about sex is after you've had it. Like, I mean, I prefer if I know somebody for a while and I take a while to sleep with somebody, that's kind of, guys I don't care about. If I see no future whatsoever, I couldn't care less. That was a time period that I was trying to learn how to be with players and bad boys, so I'd have something to say to everyone. I got nothing to say to you if I've been with a guy 10 years. What am I going to tell you? Pick right. I didn't have anything to say. But I think you're right, too, because you gave everybody a heads up as to how it's going to go. I'm with you because I'm having a good time. If you meet somebody, let me know. If I meet somebody, I'll let you know. I'm not doing this, I'm doing that. So everybody knows where to put their head. That's beautiful. See, I don't have a preference over this is perfect and that isn't perfect. Only go for this or only go for that. Whatever you choose to do, make sure you have come to an agreement with your partner. That way you're clear on what the terms of engagement are. You're going to have
100%.
Less pain, less drama, less heartache, more happiness. You've already established honest and clear communication. I mean, this is brilliant. This is exactly what we need to be doing, however we structure these relationships.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the last thing I'll say before we open this up to questions and answers is, I think if we had to summarize this entire beautiful conversation that we had and go back to the original question, which is, you know, do you really know what you want in dating? And I'd say my answer to summarize that would be, I think you have to know yourself to the point of actually having been, you have to kind of get that self-awareness by going through the motions of dating first. Once you've got that up, you will then build a picture as to what you want. And once you have that, you address that on date 1 or 2 if you're, getting used to it, just to be very crystal clear and consistent with that too. During the dating process, it's very easy for someone to say, I want a relationship, but then fall off the bandwagon down the line. Does that mean that you're being rejected because you're a bad person? No, it just means that that person is probably just dishonest with themselves, or they've got something to work on within them. It is not a reflection of you. It's really just, it does boil down a bit to a numbers game, because you've just got to go, keep getting the numbers in to make sure that it's right and go from there. Does it mean that love is a numbers game? No, but you really want to achieve at the end goal what you want. And at a baseline, I think in terms of feeling, if there was one silver bullet that I would say is the most important thing to all of this, if you're feeling stable and not insecure, you're doing all right. What are your thoughts on that?
You're perfect. You're hired. I love it. Everything you said is brilliant. I've got nothing to add to it. It's absolutely brilliant. We don't know what we want most times until we get out there and experience what we don't want. Then we have one vital piece of information. So if you're in the process of figuring this out, when you go out and you have interactions romantically, start to isolate. Okay, I like this, this, and this. This I keep in my formula. It's like a recipe for your best stew ever. And a little bit too much of this, a little bit more of that. And I didn't even know I liked this. Okay, I definitely don't want that. So then we have to go to what is its positive opposite. If I don't like feeling insecure and there's so little, let's say they don't have enough contact with you, and you feel like you're working so hard on your end, and you've expressed this, and it's not going to work out, and they still don't do it. You just say, and I want somebody who's communicative. I want somebody who's motivated and communicative. And so you make that your new plus, and you keep that. But I love everything you said. Thank you, Ken. That's beautiful.
No, it's my pleasure. And look, I always love talking with you, Susan, because this is the kind of good stuff that we get to do when we're together with this sort of stuff too. Now, prior to going to question and answer, I realize we're a little bit short on time. So I think it'd actually be a great opportunity for the audience to ask a question for each of us, and we can go from there. But prior to doing that, guys, feel free to ask your questions now in the questions section, and we'll get to those shortly. But before we answer 2 of those, my quick shout out for our audience is just to firstly say thank you, Susan, first and foremost, for joining this chat with me, because I've absolutely loved every minute of it. I wish we could talk for hours, but life is life. Thank you for bringing also your audience. I really greatly appreciate meeting and mingling with such fabulous people here too. And also on a personal level, I just want to say thank you to people like Martin Copping for being such an amazing, supportive person in this process too.
Is he with us today? Is Martin with us today? Maybe not. We have to catch him on here later. Oh, Mike Islam. I want to say hi to Mike. Mike joined on Monday, and I didn't have a chance to say hi to him. And he's a buddy of mine here from New York. Fabulous guy. And I don't want to keep my glasses on because I want to look pretty, but I can't see a damn thing if I don't have them on. So actually, that's why I put them on. So thank you. Thank you to my buddies that are coming by. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think it's fantastic that you got such a great crowd that are coming on here too. But let's go over to some of the questions. So I've got 2 here. I'll give one for you. So, this is a great one. Are long distance relationships bad?
No, they're just harder. They're harder because you have to work even harder to maintain the goals of the relationship progression, meaning you have to be in constant communication, and you have to work harder to make sure that these goals are met. Meaning, if our goal is that the end goal of all long distance relationships is ideally to spend time together, to be in a closer environment. Unless you've structured a lat relationship, living apart together, and that's how you want to do it. But in person, you're going to have to be in person. They're not bad. They take much more work and much more diligence and much more thoughtfulness to keep them going.
I'd agree with that. I'd say my answer to that is, if you're a gay guy and you're doing long distance, my question is, what's the reason that you're doing that? Because for one partner, it might be their way of thinking, oh, good, I'm building a relationship. But for the other partner, that's their definition of space. And so if you're getting unmet needs, address that sooner rather than later, because there's no point in having a relationship if it doesn't suit both of you.
And let me go back. This is even more basic. You may think you are in a long distance relationship, but are you actually in a relationship? I can't tell you how many people write me and they say, I've had this long distance relationship with my boyfriend. We've never met. I'm like, what? we've never, I mean, do you just have a digital romance? Because virtual love affairs are kind of easy, especially now in the time of COVID. Are they really your partner? Not just what they say and love bomb you. Are they actually your partner? I mean, do you have real agreements? You've actually met their real person? I always worry about that stuff.
No, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. I've got one here. Is it a red flag if a guy wants to have separate houses forever, although he's deeply committed?
No, it is an evolutionary design. The only question is, does it work for you? I used to think that this was a horrible suggestion. Things are changing, and I would actually like that myself. I would like to have a home big enough that I'm on one wing and my partner's on another, and we meet in the middle. Because at some point, depending upon our work and our time together, we just want quality time together. If you are in a committed relationship, the person is not living apart from you because they are resistant to commitment. So it depends upon, do you trust them? Why do they need to be separate? Are they a writer? Are they a creative? Do they need time alone because it regroups them? And do they spend enough time with you so that even that they return to a separate residence, are you 3 to 4 nights a week together? And do you have a key to their place? And can you go back and forth with each other? Is it just that they have a home, they've invested in it, they like it, their work is there? Is it their home office? Why do they keep a separate residence? That's what I would ask.
I completely agree with that. And I'd say, the base question again, how does this impact you? I know I sound like a therapist because I've got the training on, but if it upsets you, address it sooner rather than later, because it's only going to cause friction otherwise. And your best bet is to just hear from them, because if it's going to be something that causes problems down the line, oh boy, that's just not worth the hassle. It's not so much the issue of they're having a separate home, but rather, the fact that you had to ask the question in the first place. There's obviously a bit of anxiety and tension in that. And I'm not necessarily calling that.
I understand that, because if this is for real, and if they're really committed, and the person needs to know why. Because in the traditional world, a separate home means I'm not letting you into my life. It's an exclusion.
Yeah.
So if we are talking a new love model, and they are doing an a la carte, and they are a committed relationship, and we plan on being together, but I have a separate home, the other one should have a bullet phrase that is absolutely real for them. They say, no, they're creative. He does weird hours. He paints at 3 a.m. because he gets inspired, and that's where he gets it. I got a key to the house. I can go anytime I want. There's nothing sneaky on the side. It's just his thing, but he's got to know that I think it's a man, right? He's got to know why.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree with you. And I think that once you know that why, it's a little easier to reconcile and go from there.
Exactly.
I think I've got time for one more question. This is actually a great one. One of our users asked, let me just pull it up here because I want to read this accurately. Just bear with me one moment. Oh yeah, any pointers on being in a relationship with a male who has high suggestive traits of Asperger's? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one.
I've been there. Okay, so, God, listen, I was dialing for dollars. I have to tell you, honestly, I sought 6 years, Ken. I put myself to the task of dating the worst men possible. Players, like guys, impossible. I had nothing to share. I had long-term, loving, committed relationships. I got nothing for you. Don't think you go to somebody who's lived with a person 20 years for advice. You need the person that's gone through every foxhole, every barrier, every problem. They're the ones that can tell you what happened. So I dated this guy, and we were a couple, and we both had a reluctant relationship with each other. He was the accidental boyfriend. He had Asperger's, and brilliant as well. So it was the kind of thing where he was the kid that probably pointed and said, look, mommy, that lady's fat and ugly. That's the kind of conversation I would have. And it is hard on the self-esteem. It is difficult to deal with. There's not a sensitivity cue as to how that is affecting you. There is this brutal honesty that's also, and I think in my particular case, and I don't know this person's case, but in my particular case, there is that innate self-judgment that he had against himself. Happy people Happy people don't pick on other people. Happy people don't see negative things. Positive people don't see negative things. So there was a critical part of himself that he had innately that he would project onto others and then bring that forward. But you're probably not going to get a lot of compliments. Doesn't mean you won't get a lot of love. And again, as Ken has said, and I've said in stereo, the only question to ask is, how does that affect you? Are you getting the quality relationship you want? That's your 10 or 20% of the brown paper bag. That's the shit that you're holding that you didn't know you were going to be holding. So is that something that works for you? On whole, the rest of it, does this person come through for you? Do they love you? Do you feel safe and secure? They've just got this issue or this, you know, condition. So how do you deal with it? How does it affect you?
Correct. And I think the last thing I'll say on that is, I think at the end of the day, if a person has Asperger's or any mental condition which they've identified to you, I think the clear thing is, don't address it as like, oh, they have Asperger's, therefore they're this way. No, talk to them like they're a human being. Listen to them and see if this is a dynamic that you can work with, because this is where I go a bit all mental health on everyone, but it's very easy to get bogged down on the label of the mental condition and to not actually just, you know, sit with that person and recognize, you know, what they're going through as well. Does it mean you have to sit through all of it? No. If your boundaries are being breached and you're now getting into what's called an abusive relationship because they're mentally, verbally, emotionally, or even physically hurting you, that's a no-go zone. But I think when it comes to, you know, when we hear someone like, oh, they've got a history of depression and anxiety, I want people to understand that mental conditions are exactly that, a phase. You know, in many cases that they can come and they can go, and that for some people who do live with this for much longer than others, you know, it is really, really hard. But I think the most important thing is that when you both work as a team to work the other partner's triggers and to understand how they work, and it doesn't impact you too much to the point where the dynamic is ruptured and hurt, go from there. It's just understanding and learning more than anything else. And I think that's the last thing I've got to say on that though. But yeah,
and you're brilliant.
Susan,
you're brilliant. Thank you, my dear, my Aussie buddy. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful we have you as a resource. There are times that, I mean, I learn as I go, but I love the fact that you are here because your community is so big and there's a lot going on. And I'm really, really grateful that we have somebody with your insight and sensitivity and thoughtfulness and acumen in this level of work. So thank you so much. And thank you for letting me be on your show. I appreciate it.
No, it's my absolute pleasure. I'm going to have to be a little bit rude and cut this off before Instagram tells me I can't save this because I want this for everyone.
Okay.
So
bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. And I'll speak to you later, Susan. Thank you so much.